Why do wet dreams happen? Causes, frequency, myths, side effects, and what you can do. Important note for the video. Wet dreams, medically called nocturnal emissions, are generally a normal part of puberty and sexual development. They are not by themselves a disease or a sign that the body is becoming weak. There also isn't good medical evidence that today's new generation is experiencing them more often than previous generations. They may simply be discussed more openly now. Wet dreams are most common around puberty, although they can happen later as well. Full U.S. English video script. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night or in the morning and noticed that semen has been released while you were sleeping? And then suddenly, questions start running through your mind. Why did this happen? Is something wrong with my body? Am I becoming weak? Does it mean my hormones are abnormal? Will it affect my future married life? Does losing semen make the body lose energy? And perhaps the question that worries many young men the most, how can I stop it? If you have ever experienced this, first of all, take a breath. There is something extremely important you need to know. A wet dream, medically known as a nocturnal emission, is a normal biological phenomenon in which ejaculation happens during sleep. It is particularly common during puberty and adolescence. So before you become frightened, ashamed, or convinced that you have a serious disease, let's understand what is actually happening inside the body. In this video, we're going to explain what wet dreams are, why they happen, what age they usually begin, whether they become more common in today's younger generation, whether frequent wet dreams are harmful, what the real side effects are, which myths you should stop believing, what you can do if they're bothering you, and most importantly, whether you actually need medicine at all. And stay until the end because we're also going to discuss situations where repeated ejaculation during sleep may deserve a conversation with a healthcare professional. What exactly is a wet dream? Let's start with the simplest definition. A wet dream is an ejaculation that happens while a person is asleep. You may not even remember having a sexual dream. You may simply wake up and notice semen in your underwear or on your bedsheet. This can happen involuntarily. In other words, you don't consciously decide to do it. Your body can produce an erection during sleep, particularly during periods of REM sleep, and ejaculation can sometimes occur. An erotic dream may accompany it, but a person does not necessarily need to remember a sexual dream for a nocturnal emission to happen. This is one reason young people can become confused. They may think, I didn't do anything, so why did my body do this? The answer is that the reproductive system is capable of functioning automatically. Just as your heart beats without you consciously telling it to beat, many sexual and reproductive processes can occur without conscious control. When do wet dreams usually start? Wet dreams are most closely associated with puberty. During puberty, the body goes through major hormonal changes. The testicles begin producing sperm, testosterone levels rise, the reproductive organs mature, erections become more common, and ejaculation becomes biologically possible. Cleveland Clinic notes that ejaculation typically begins around puberty, although the exact timing varies from person to person. So one teenager might experience a wet dream relatively early, while another might not experience one until later. There is no single age at which every boy or young man is supposed to have his first wet dream. Human bodies don't all follow exactly the same schedule, and that's completely normal. Why does the body do this? This is where many myths begin. You may have heard people say, the body has too much semen, so it has to get rid of it. Or, wet dreams happen because semen has become poisonous. Or, every wet dream means you have lost a huge amount of energy. These claims are not medically accurate. The reproductive system is much more complicated than that. Sperm are continuously produced in the testicles, while semen is made from sperm plus fluids produced by reproductive glands. Sexual arousal and ejaculation are controlled by the nervous system and involve hormones, blood flow, muscles, and the reproductive organs. During sleep, erections can occur naturally. Sexual dreams or other forms of unconscious stimulation may occur, and sometimes ejaculation happens. That's a normal physiological process. It does not automatically mean something is wrong. Does a sexual dream have to happen? Not necessarily. Some people remember having an erotic dream. others don't. You might wake up knowing that you had a vivid dream, or you might remember absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean anything is wrong. Sleep involves different stages, and erections can occur naturally during sleep. An erotic dream can sometimes lead to ejaculation, but a person doesn't necessarily need to remember a sexual dream for a wet dream to occur. So don't become obsessed with trying to figure out, what exactly was I dreaming about? The dream itself isn't usually the important issue. The important point is that nocturnal emissions can be part of normal sexual development. Is it happening more to today's new generation? This is a very common question. You may hear people say, today's teenagers are having wet dreams much more frequently. But we need to be careful with statements like this. There isn't strong evidence that today's generation universally experiences wet dreams more often than previous generations. Wet dreams have been recognized as a normal part of puberty for a very long time. What's different today is that young people have much easier access to health information and social media. Someone who once stayed silent about the subject can now search online and find thousands of discussions about it. So it may feel like the problem is becoming much more common. But more people talking about something doesn't necessarily mean the biological phenomenon has increased. An individual frequency can vary significantly. One person may experience wet dreams occasionally. Another may experience them more frequently. Another may rarely experience them. And some people may never notice them. There is no universal number that every healthy person must meet. How often is too often? This is one of the biggest questions. What if it happens twice a month? What if it happens once a week? What if it happens several times? There isn't a simple medical rule saying, if it happens exactly X times, you have a disease. Frequency can vary between individuals. What's much more important is whether there are other symptoms. For example, if ejaculation during sleep is accompanied by pain, blood and semen, burning when urinating, unusual discharge, significant genital or pelvic pain, fever, or other concerning symptoms, that's different from an uncomplicated wet dream. In those situations, a healthcare professional should evaluate you. But if you simply wake up occasionally and discover that you had an involuntary ejaculation during sleep, that alone generally isn't a reason to assume you're sick. Does a wet dream make you weak? This is one of the most damaging myths. Many young men become extremely anxious because they believe, I lost semen, so I lost my strength. They may feel tired the next morning and immediately blame the wet dream. But ejaculation does not mean that your body has suddenly lost all its energy, protein, muscle, or vitality. Semen contains sperm and fluids, but the body is constantly producing reproductive cells and fluids. A normal nocturnal emission is not equivalent to losing some enormous reserve of life energy. If you wake up feeling tired after a wet dream, there may be many other explanations. Maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe you went to bed late. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe you have an irregular sleep schedule. Maybe you're simply tired. Don't automatically blame the wet dream. Does it cause weight loss? No. A normal wet dream is not a recognized cause of meaningful weight loss. If someone is losing weight without trying, especially if the weight loss is significant or accompanied by weakness, fever, excessive thirst, digestive problems, or other symptoms that deserves medical attention. But don't assume that ordinary nocturnal emissions are causing unexplained weight loss. Does it lower testosterone? A normal wet dream should not be viewed as a condition that permanently destroys testosterone. Puberty itself involves major hormonal changes, including changes in testosterone. Sexual function and reproductive development are part of that process. So don't fall into the trap of believing, every time I have a wet dream, my testosterone disappears. That's not how the endocrine system works. Does it cause infertility? Another frightening myth is that wet dreams can make a man infertile. A normal wet dream does not mean that you've damaged your reproductive system. Sperm production is an ongoing biological process. If a person has genuine fertility concerns later in life, those concerns should be evaluated medically rather than blamed on normal nocturnal emissions. Does it damage future married life? This is another common fear. Some young men worry, if I have too many wet dreams now, will I have problems after marriage? A normal wet dream is not by itself evidence that someone will have sexual dysfunction or infertility in the future. Don't allow fear and shame to turn a normal physiological process into a source of constant anxiety. If someone has persistent sexual problems, pain, erectile difficulties, ejaculation problems, or other symptoms, that's a separate medical issue that can be discussed with a healthcare professional. What are the real side effects? Here's an important distinction. Wet dreams themselves are generally not considered a harmful disease with dangerous side effects. The bigger problem can sometimes be the anxiety surrounding them. A young man may become frightened. He may start checking his underwear every morning. He may search the internet for hours. He may purchase unproven supplements. He may take unnecessary medicines. He may believe his body is becoming weak. And eventually, the fear becomes a bigger problem than the wet dream itself. That's why accurate education is so important. Can stress make the experience feel worse? Stress can affect sleep and sexual thoughts, and everyone's experience is different. But you shouldn't assume that stress is the single cause of every wet dream. Instead, think about your overall health. Are you sleeping enough? Are you constantly anxious? Are you consuming lots of stimulating content late at night? Are you spending hours on your phone? Are you exercising? Are you eating reasonably well? Are you mentally exhausted? Improving your general lifestyle can support better sleep and overall well-being, even though it doesn't guarantee that wet dreams will stop. Does watching sexual content cause wet dreams? Sexual thoughts and erotic content can influence sexual arousal, and some people may notice a relationship between sexual dreams or thoughts and nocturnal emissions. But there isn't a simple formula saying, watch this equals wet dream tonight. Human sleep and sexual responses are more complicated than that. If sexual content is taking over your life, interfering with sleep, causing distress, or making it difficult to concentrate on school, work, relationships, or daily responsibilities, reducing your exposure can be a healthy choice. But don't blame yourself for a normal, involuntary bodily event. Can you completely stop wet dreams? This is where many internet videos make unrealistic promises. You may see someone advertising, "Stop wet dreams permanently. Take this herb. Drink this mixture. Use this capsule. Eat this special food. Be extremely careful." There is no universal food, drink, vitamin, herb, or supplement that guarantees that wet dreams will stop. And because wet dreams are generally a normal physiological process, trying to completely eliminate every occurrence isn't necessarily medically necessary. The goal should be health, comfort, and peace of mind, not fear of a normal bodily function. What about medicines? This is extremely important. Do not start taking medication simply because you experience wet dreams. There is no standard medicine that every healthy young man should take to prevent normal nocturnal emissions. Taking prescription medicines without medical supervision can create unnecessary side effects and may be more harmful than the original problem. The same warning applies to online sexual health pills, herbal mixtures, testosterone products, and so-called semen loss treatments. Some products marketed online may not have reliable evidence behind them, and some supplements can interact with medicines or create health risks. If the problem is genuinely persistent and accompanied by other symptoms, the right approach is to talk to a doctor. The doctor can determine whether there is actually a medical problem. What can you do if wet dreams are bothering you? Start with simple things. Number 1, don't panic. The first step is understanding that wet dreams can be normal. Number 2, maintain good sleep habits. Try to maintain a regular bedtime. Give yourself enough time to sleep. Keep your sleeping environment comfortable. Number 3, exercise regularly. Regular physical activity supports overall physical and mental health. Number 4, manage stress. Find healthy ways to relax. Walking, exercise, hobbies, social connection, and relaxation practices can all help with general well-being. Number 5, avoid obsessive checking. Don't wake up every morning and immediately start worrying. Did it happen again? That kind of anxiety can become exhausting. Number 6, avoid unproven medicines. Don't take a pill just because an internet video says it will stop ejaculation during sleep. Number 7, talk to a healthcare professional if something seems abnormal. That's the safest approach. What should you eat? There isn't a special wet dream diet. You don't need one magical food to prevent nocturnal emissions. Instead, focus on overall nutrition. Eat a balanced diet containing vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, adequate protein, and healthy sources of fat. Drink enough water according to your individual needs. And avoid making highly processed foods, excessive sugary drinks, and excessive junk food the foundation of your diet. A healthy diet supports your entire body. It isn't a magic treatment for wet dreams. What about milk, bananas, eggs, garlic, or honey? You may hear claims that certain foods either cause or prevent wet dreams. Don't automatically believe them. There isn't a single food that has been scientifically established as a universal cure for normal nocturnal emissions. Eat nutritious foods because they support general health, not because someone promised they will switch off your reproductive system. Does masturbation prevent wet dreams? Some people claim that masturbation is a guaranteed way to prevent wet dreams. That's too simplistic. People experience sexual function differently. Masturbation itself is considered a normal sexual behavior by major sexual health organizations, but it is not necessary to perform it simply because you're afraid of having a wet dream. If you don't want to masturbate, you don't need to. And if you experience a wet dream, you don't need to feel guilty. The important thing is understanding your body and making choices that fit your personal values and health. What if it happens very frequently? This is where you should stop relying on internet advice and consider talking with a healthcare professional, especially if you experience persistent pain, pain during ejaculation, blood and semen, burning during urination, unusual discharge, genital swelling, severe pelvic pain, fever, significant urinary symptoms, or a sudden major change in your sexual or reproductive function. Those symptoms may point to something other than an ordinary wet dream. A doctor can take a history, perform an appropriate examination, and order tests if necessary. Don't self-diagnose. Don't confuse semen with urine. This is another issue that can cause confusion. Some people wake up with wet underwear and aren't sure what happened. A wet dream involves ejaculation of semen. Bedwetting, on the other hand, is involuntary urination during sleep. These are completely different things. If you're unsure whether you're experiencing ejaculation or urine leakage, don't be embarrassed to ask a healthcare professional. They've heard these questions before, and there's nothing shameful about asking for medical information. Why education is so important for young people. The teenage years and early adulthood can be confusing. Your body is changing. Hormones are changing. Your emotions are changing. Your sexual development is changing. And unfortunately, misinformation spreads extremely quickly online. One video says semen loss causes weakness, another says wet dreams destroy testosterone, another sells an herbal capsule, another claims you need a special powder, and suddenly a normal biological process starts looking like a dangerous disease. That's exactly why reliable health information matters. The biggest myth to remember. If you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this: a wet dream is not automatically a sign that something is wrong with you. It can be a normal part of sexual development. It can happen during puberty. It can happen later. It can happen occasionally, and the frequency can vary between individuals. You don't need to feel ashamed. You don't need to panic, and you don't need to buy a mysterious medicine from the internet. When should you see a doctor? Now let's make this very clear. If you simply experience an occasional wet dream and have no other symptoms, there's usually no reason to assume you have a serious medical problem. But speak with a healthcare professional if you have symptoms such as pain, blood in semen, burning when urinating, unusual discharge, persistent genital or pelvic pain, fever, problems with urination, or another major change that concerns you. And if you're extremely anxious about your sexual health, you can also talk to a doctor. You don't need to wait until something becomes serious. A confidential conversation with a healthcare professional can often provide reassurance. The final message. So why do wet dreams happen? Because the reproductive system becomes active during sexual development, especially during puberty. During sleep, erections can occur naturally. Sexual dreams or unconscious sexual arousal may occur, and sometimes ejaculation happens. That's what we call a nocturnal emission or wet dream. It doesn't mean that your body is being damaged. It doesn't automatically mean you're weak, it doesn't mean you've lost your future sexual ability, and it doesn't mean you need medication. If you're experiencing wet dreams, the first thing you need is knowledge, not fear. Take care of your overall health. Get enough sleep. Exercise. Eat a balanced diet. Manage stress. Avoid unnecessary medicines and supplements. And if you notice pain, blood, discharge, urinary problems, fever, or other unusual symptoms, talk to a qualified healthcare professional. Most importantly, don't let embarrassment stop you from asking questions. Your body changes, puberty changes your hormones. Sexual development is a normal part of growing up, and understanding those changes is much healthier than being frightened by them. So, the next time you wake up and realize you've had a wet dream, don't immediately think, something is wrong with me. Instead, understand what happened. Your body may simply be going through a normal physiological process. And if something genuinely feels abnormal, that's when a healthcare professional can help you find the answer. Knowledge removes fear. And when it comes to sexual health, accurate information is one of the best forms of protection. This video is for general educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personalized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.